She sits at home, writing her little mystery novels. Julian's voice, amplified by the microphone, sneered his smile. Too wide, too confident. Maybe she'll even put you in one. A cold flush crept up Nora's neck, the heat pooling in her cheeks. Her spine rigid against the velvet of her chair at table 12. The air solidified, each atom heavy with unspoken pity. But they didn't know about the quiet hum of the mini recorder tucked into her clutch, capturing every dismissive syllable. Or the hidden clause in a certain contract, penned in a name no one in this room would recognize. To truly understand how Nora Hartley, the woman currently being auctioned off for $1 at a high society charity gala, had arrived at this precipice, one needed to peel back 5 years. 5 years to the Tuesday afternoon that had marked her 60th birthday and her retirement from Dalton Insurance. 35 years she'd given to that company, a lifetime spent answering phones and filing paperwork, and for her send-off, Eleanor from accounting had brought a grocery store cake. They'd spelled her name wrong, of course. Nora, not Nora. She hadn't corrected them. She never did. The congratulations were rote, the well wishes generic. You'll love retirement, Nora. Now you can finally relax. They smiled, meaning well, perhaps. Meaning your son Julian couldn't make it. He sent a text around 2 o'clock. Sorry, Mom. Big meeting. Can't get away. Congrats. She'd read it twice, the small screen of her phone, cool beneath her thumb, before tucking it back into her purse. Of course he was busy. He had important things to do. Julian always had important things to do. She drove home to her apartment in Normal Heights, a quiet, unassuming corner of the city, where the houses wore their age with grace. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor. She'd moved in years ago after Julian left for university, wanting something smaller, easier to manage on her own. The building was quiet, the afternoon sun, a warm stripe across the worn carpet. She unlocked the door, the click echoing in the stillness, and stepped into her living room. A thrift store couch, a coffee table scarred with a water ring she'd never quite managed to buff out. Everything she owned fit into this small space, a life neatly compartmentalized, reduced. She made tea, the gentle hiss of the kettle, a temporary companion, and sat at the kitchen table. Dust motes danced in the golden light, filtering through the window, illuminating the quiet accumulation of years. 60 years old, single mother, high school graduate who never went to college. That was her resume. That was all she'd ever be. Graham's voice, her late husband, still echoed, sometimes a faint, persistent whisper in the quiet corners of her mind. He'd been gone for over 30 years, but his words clung to her like a forgotten scent. You're not smart enough for college, Nora. Why waste the money? He'd said it when they were dating, said it after they married. And she, in her youthful naivete, had believed him. Julian used to ask about it when he was younger. Not mean, just curious. Why didn't you go to college like other mums? Each question made her feel smaller, a constant reminder of a basic requirement she hadn't met. The other mothers had degrees. The other mothers had careers. Nora had a job answering phones and filing paperwork. She'd done her best, worked every day, made sure the rent was paid and there was food in the fridge, put Julian through university on a payment plan that had bled her dry, taking everything she had. But her best had never felt like enough. Now he worked at a prestigious finance firm downtown, wore expensive suits, made good money. She was proud of him. Of course she was. But sometimes when they spoke, she could hear the distance in his voice, like he'd moved into a world she didn't belong in, a world too polished and too fast for her quiet existence. The tea grew cold while she sat there. The apartment was so quiet she could hear Ms. Albright, her upstairs neighbour, moving around. Was this it now? Sitting alone in a small apartment waiting for her son to remember to call, her gaze drifted to the laptop on the counter. She'd bought it a few months earlier. told herself it was for staying connected, but there was something else she'd thought about doing with it, something she'd wanted since she was young, but never had the courage to try. Writing. She'd loved books her whole life. Teachers used to say she had a good imagination, that she could write. Miss Sterling, her 11th grade English teacher, had once told her, "You have a voice, Nora. You should think about writing more." She'd never forgotten that. You have a voice, like she had something worth saying. But Graham had laughed when she mentioned it once. You write a book. You can barely get through a newspaper. And that had been that. She stopped talking about it. Stopped thinking about it, but except late at night, when sleep evaded her. Who was she kidding, anyway? She was 60 years old. She'd never even been to college. She'd spent her whole life answering phones and filing papers and trying to keep her head above water. What made her think she could write anything worth reading? Nothing. That was the answer. Nothing made her think that. But she got up and opened the laptop anyway. Her hands shook a little as she created a new document. The blank screen stared back at her, a vast, intimidating expanse. The cursor blinked a silent, expectant rhythm. She didn't know what she was doing. She started typing, just words. A sentence about a woman sitting alone, then another. They were terrible. She could see that immediately. Clumsy and obvious, nothing like the elegant prose of the books she loved. The kind of writing that would make Miss Sterling shake her head. She kept typing anyway. What else was she going to do? Sit here and watch television until she fell asleep. Wait for Julian to text her back in 3 days. Spend the rest of her life being the woman who'd never finished anything she started. She wasn't smart enough to write a book. Probably not. But she had time now. For the first time in decades, she had time, and that was something she could try. Even if she failed, even if no one ever read a single word, the sun moved across the table, painting the dust motes in shifting gold. The words kept coming. Slow and awkward, and probably worthless, but they were hers. She thought about Miss Sterling. You have a voice, Nora. Maybe she'd been wrong, but Nora was going to find out. She saved the document and named it Chapter 1. 3 pages of terrible writing. She stared at it for a long time. Part of her wanted to delete it, right then get it over with. Instead, she closed the laptop and went to make more tea. If not now, when tomorrow she'd likely delete it. Realize how stupid this was. But tonight, just for tonight, she'd written something. That was more than she'd done in 60 years. She didn't delete it. The next morning, she woke up, made coffee, and opened that document. The 3 pages were still terrible, but she added a 4th page anyway, then a 5th. 6 months later, she had a manuscript, 247 pages about a woman named Helena, who'd just turned 62 and stumbled into a murder investigation in her retirement community. Helena was smart, observant, the kind of woman people underestimated until it was too late. Nora had written what she wanted to read. What she wished existed a woman her age who wasn't someone's grandmother in the background, who wasn't invisible, who solved the puzzle while everyone else was still looking in the wrong direction. The file sat on her laptop for 2 weeks after she typed the last sentence. She didn't know what to do with it. You couldn't just walk into a bookstore and hand them pages. She'd looked it up. There were agents, publishers, query letters, a whole system she didn't understand. She spent 3 weeks reading everything she could find online. How to write a query letter. How to find an agent. What publishers wanted. Most of it felt like reading a foreign language. She made a list of agents who represented psychological thrillers. 15 names. She wrote a query letter, rewrote it again. Then she sat there, staring at the screen, her finger hovering over the send button. Graham's voice in her head, clear as day. Who do you think you are? She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she sent 14 more. The first rejection came 2 weeks later. She was washing dishes when the email arrived. She dried her hands and read it on her phone. "Thank you for your query, but this isn't the right fit for our list." She sat down at the kitchen table and cried. Just sat there with soap suds still on her wrists and cried like someone had died. Julian called that week. She almost didn't tell him about the rejection, but she wanted someone to understand what it felt like. "I got a rejection today," she said, her voice thin. "From a literary agent. A rejection." He paused. "Mum, I don't want to be harsh, but maybe this is a sign. You're 60 years old. How many 60-year-olds get book deals? The publishing world is pretty competitive, and they're looking for young, fresh voices. Miss Sterling always said I could write. Yeah, when you were 17. That was 43 years ago. Look, I'm just being realistic here. Maybe it's time to find a hobby that's more age-appropriate. Have you thought about joining a book club instead of trying to write for one?" Her throat closed up. "I see. Don't get upset. I'm trying to help you avoid disappointment. Anyway, I got promoted today, senior accounts team. I'll be managing the big clients now. 6-figure deals. Pretty excited about it." "That's wonderful, Julian. Thanks. Hey, I've got to run. Client dinner in an hour. These things wait for no one. You understand?" He hung up before she could say goodbye. The second rejection came 3 days later, then the third, then the fifth. She stopped counting after the 10th one. They all said basically the same thing. "Not right for us, not what we're looking for. We'll pass." By the 20th rejection, she was staring at the delete button on her manuscript file. Her cursor hovered over it. One click, and it would be gone. She could pretend she'd never tried, never failed. Go back to being exactly who she'd always been. Julian had been right. She was too old for this too late. The publishing world didn't want women her age writing books. Her finger was on the mouse, ready. Then an email came in. The subject line said "Full manuscript request." She blinked, read it again. Whitmore Press, a small publisher she'd queried 3 weeks ago. They wanted to read the whole manuscript, not just the sample pages. She sat there shaking, read the email 5 times to make sure she wasn't misunderstanding. They wanted to read her book. She sent the manuscript that night. Then she waited. Every day she checked her email 20 times. 30. The publisher's website said they responded within 8 to 12 weeks. She counted every single day. 2 months and 3 days later, another email arrived. "Dear Ms. Hartley, we would like to offer you a publishing contract for your manuscript." She read that line until the words stopped making sense. Then she read it again. They wanted to publish her book. Actually print it. Put it in stores. Her book. She stood up from the table, sat back down. Stood up again. She wanted to call someone. Tell someone, share this with someone who would understand what it meant. She called Julian. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Mom. Kind of in the middle of something. What's up?" "They want to publish my book." The words tumbled out. "A publisher. Whitmore Press. They sent me a contract. Julian, they're going to actually print my book." Silence. "Then wait, seriously. Someone actually wants to publish it." "Yes, Whitmore Press." Another pause. "Never heard of them." "Are you sure they're legit?" "There are a lot of scams targeting older people who want to be writers." "Did they ask you for money?" The excitement drained out of her. "They're a real publisher, Julian." "Okay, but have you Googled them?" "I'm just saying a real publisher probably wouldn't want, no offense, but what kind of publisher goes after first-time authors your age? They specialize in mysteries and thrillers, right? So what's the advance? $500, 1,000. I read somewhere these small presses barely pay anything. You're not expecting to make real money off this, are you? Nora looked at the contract still open on her screen. I haven't looked at all the details yet. Well, that's the first thing you should check. Don't get your hopes up about this being some kind of career. It's probably just vanity publishing with a professional name, which is fine. I mean, if it makes you happy. To say you have a published book that's nice. Just don't quit your day job. He laughed at his own joke. Oh, wait. You already did that. I should let you go, she said quietly. Yeah, I really do have to run. This client call started 5 minutes ago, and we're talking about a $3 million account. Real high-stakes stuff, but hey, congrats on the book thing. That's different. Talk later. The line went dead. She sat there, holding the phone, staring at her contract, a contract from a real publisher who wanted her work. But all she could hear was Julian's voice. Vanity publishing. Don't quit your day job. First-time authors your age. He'd hung up. Didn't say he was proud. Didn't ask what the book was about. Didn't even sound happy for her. Just assumption that she'd been scammed, that this wasn't real, that she was too old for anyone to actually want her work. She looked at the contract again. It said they were printing 5,000 copies. It said they thought her book could find an audience. It said someone believed in her. Julian just didn't happen to be that someone. The publisher asked if she wanted to use a pen name. She said yes, immediately. It felt safer, like she could keep Nora Hartley separate from whoever was about to have a book published, like she could hide if this went wrong. She spent an hour trying different combinations. Ilara Thorne. Close enough to her real name that it felt like her. Different enough that she could disappear behind it if Julian turned out to be right. The book came out 6 months later. No book tour, no interviews. They printed 5,000 copies and sent her 10. She held one in her hands and couldn't believe it was real. Her name on the cover. Well, not her name, but close enough. The first week, nothing happened. She checked the sales rank on Amazon every hour. It was in the 600,000s, then the 500,000s. Moving so slowly she couldn't tell if anyone was buying it at all. Then a review appeared. 5 stars. The title was Finally. She clicked on it. Finally a thriller with a protagonist who looks like my mother. I'm so tired of reading about 25-year-old detectives. Helena is 62, smart, and doesn't take anyone's nonsense. This is the book I've been waiting for. Thank you, Ilara Thorne. Please, write more. She read it 10 times. Then she cried. Not like she'd cried after that first rejection. This was different. This was someone she'd never met. Someone who didn't know her real name, telling her that her book mattered. Maybe Miss Sterling had been right all those years ago. Maybe she did have a voice. She opened a new document and titled it Book 2. The second book came faster. 4 months instead of 6. She knew what she was doing this time. Helena was back, older by a year, sharper. The mystery was tighter. The writing was better. Sales of the first book kept climbing slow but steady. Reader reviews appeared every few days, most of them from women her age, who said they'd finally found a character they recognized. She read every single one. Whitmore Press called when she was halfway through the manuscript. They wanted book 2. The contract they sent was better than the first one, more money, a longer deadline. They were paying attention now. Julian came over for dinner on a Tuesday. Nora was at the kitchen table typing when he arrived. He'd let himself in with the spare key she'd given him years ago. Still at it, huh? He kissed the top of her head. That's nice, Mum. Keeps you busy. She saved the document and closed the laptop. Book 2 is coming out in 3 months. That's great. He opened her refrigerator, pulled out a beer she bought for his visits. Hey, so they're making me senior account manager, youngest person to get the position in like 10 years. Big raise. Corner office next month. Julian, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's pretty huge. Caldwell told me I'm on the partner track if I keep this up. We're talking serious money in a few years. He talked about his accounts through dinner, the clients he was landing, the deals he was closing. Nora listened and nodded and asked questions. He finished his beer and stood to leave. Wait, I wanted to tell you about the book launch. The publisher is doing an event at a bookstore in Hillcrest. Small thing, but they're going to have copies for sale. He cut her off. That's really cool, Mum. Text me the details and I'll see if I can make it. I've got a crazy few weeks coming up. He was already at the door, checking his phone. Thanks for dinner. I'll text you later. He didn't text later. 3 months later, Julian showed up at another Tuesday dinner with someone new. Her name was Serena. She had straight dark hair and wore a blazer, even though it was just dinner at Nora's apartment. She shook Nora's hand instead of hugging her. It's so nice to finally meet you, Nora. Julian talks about you all the time. They sat at Nora's kitchen table. Nora had made lasagna, the one dish she knew how to make. Serena picked at it while Julian ate 2 helpings. Julian mentioned you, right? Serena said, her tone light, dismissive. That's so sweet. What do you write? Romance novels? Psychological thrillers, actually. Oh, she laughed. Same thing, write stories. Nora opened her mouth to explain the difference, but Julian was already talking about the restaurant they tried last weekend. Serena's hand rested on his arm while he talked. She laughed at his jokes. She belonged to the world he'd built, the one where Nora was his mother who wrote little books. Nora cleared the plates. Julian and Serena left 20 minutes later. Serena hugged her at the door, quick and polite. You have such a cozy little place. Very charming. Book 2 came out the next week. The sales were stronger than the first book. It climbed into the top 10,000 on Amazon within 2 days. The reviews kept coming. More emails, more women thanking her for writing Helena. One email arrived on the Sunday morning. Nora was drinking coffee, still in her robe. Dear Ilara Thorne, I'm 64 years old. 3 years ago, my husband died, and I thought my life was over. I thought I was just waiting to die too. Then I found your books. Helena is my age. She's smart and capable and doesn't let anyone dismiss her. Your character showed me I'm just beginning. Thank you for giving me hope. Please keep writing. We need you. She read it 5 times. Then she cried into her coffee. She forwarded it to Julian with a message, This is why I write. 3 days later, he responded, That's sweet, Mum. People are really nice online, aren't they? Nora stared at his text for a long time. People are nice online, like the email was just someone being polite, like it didn't mean her work had changed how another human being saw their life. But she was learning. She didn't need Julian to understand. The woman who wrote that email understood. That was enough. An email came from New York 2 weeks later. The sender's name was Vivian Shaw, literary agent. Nora almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. Dear Ms. Thorne, I've been watching your sales trajectory with interest. Your books are finding an audience in an underserved market. I'd like to discuss representation for your future work. Would you be open to a conversation? Nora Googled her. Vivian Shaw represented best-selling thriller writers, real ones, the kind whose names she recognized from bookstore displays. They talked on the phone the next day. Vivian had a direct way of speaking that reminded Nora of Helena. You're writing for women our age, and publishers are finally paying attention. Your numbers are good. Not great yet, but growing consistently. I think with the right publisher and marketing, you could be hitting lists, real lists. You mean USA Today to start, New York Times. If we do this right, Book 3 is going to be the turning point. Are you working on it? I just started. Good. Finish it. Send it to me. I'll find you a bigger house. Nora signed with Vivian a week later. Vivian called her by her real name in private, Nora. But to the publishing world, she was Ilara Thorne. Vivian was fine with that. Whatever makes you comfortable. The work is what matters. Over the next months, Vivian taught Nora things Whitmore Press never had: how to negotiate, what to ask for what she was worth. She talked about marketing budgets and promotional tours like they were normal thing authors did. Like Nora was a normal author who deserved those things. Book 3 sold to a bigger publisher. Real advance marketing budget. They wanted to put her book in airports. Nora called Julian to tell him. She'd tried to stop needing his approval, but this felt big enough that he'd have to recognize it. "They want to put my next book in airport bookstores," she said, her voice brimming with barely contained excitement. "A major publisher. Vivian says it could hit the USA Today list." "Wow, they're really going for this, huh?" His voice sounded distant, distracted. "Well, good for you, Mum. At least it keeps you occupied. Better than sitting around the apartment all day. Keeps you occupied. Like writing 3 books that people actually read was just something to fill her time. Like she was doing crossword puzzles." "I should go," she said. "I know you're busy." "Actually, wait. I wanted to tell you Serena and I are engaged. We're doing a courthouse thing next month. Nothing fancy." Her chest tightened. "Julian, that's wonderful. Let me help you plan something. A small reception at least. Or nah. We want to keep it simple. Serena isn't into big weddings, just close family. We'll send you the details." They got married on a Tuesday afternoon. Nora wore the nicest dress she owned and sat in the small chapel with 5 other people. Serena's parents, her sister, 2 of Nora's old co-workers she'd invited because she didn't want to sit alone. The ceremony took 12 minutes. Afterwards, Serena's parents hosted a dinner at a restaurant in La Jolla. White tablecloths, wine Nora couldn't pronounce. She sat at the end of the table. Serena's sister asked what Nora did. Before she could answer, Serena jumped in. "This is Julian's mom. She writes books as a hobby." Her sister smiled. "Oh, that's nice. What kind of books?" Nora opened her mouth, closed it. Julian was talking to Serena's father about a client. He hadn't heard, or he'd heard, and didn't correct her. "Mysteries," Nora said finally. "I write mysteries. How fun. I should pick one up sometime." She never asked for the title. Nora didn't offer it. She left before dessert, said she wasn't feeling well. Julian walked her to her car. "You okay, Mum?" "I'm fine. Just tired. Thanks for coming. I know it wasn't a big thing, but it meant a lot to have you here." He hugged her, then turned back to his new wife and her family, and the life he was building that had less and less room for Nora in it. She drove home through streets she'd known for 40 years, turned on the radio, turned it off, sat at red lights, and thought about that woman's email, the one who said her books gave her hope. Julian didn't understand her work. Maybe he never would. Serena called it a hobby. Vivian called it a career. Nora knew which one was right. Book 4 hit the USA Today bestseller list 2 weeks after release. Vivian called her while Nora was at the grocery store staring at a display of her own book in the checkout lane. "Nora, you did it bestseller." She stood there holding a box of pasta, looking at Elara Thorne's name on that list, number 17. The money came next. Royalties from 4 books, a cascade she hadn't dared to dream of. Foreign rights, sold in 15 countries. Audiobook sales soared. Her accountant called sounding almost giddy about estimated taxes. The numbers on the screen didn't look real, over $700,000 in the past year. She'd made more writing in 12 months than she'd made in a decade of answering phones. Vivienne explained the intense production schedule when Nora asked how she'd managed 4 books in 5 years. "You write clean, Nora. Minimal editing. Your deadlines are tight, but you hit them. Most authors can't sustain this pace, but you can." Nora didn't tell her she'd been writing every day because she didn't know what else to do with herself. That the stories kept coming because Helena kept showing up in her head with new mysteries to solve a constant, urgent companion. Life changed in small, profound ways. She stopped checking price tags at the grocery store. When her old car made a strange noise, she took it to the mechanic without calculating whether she could afford the repair. The constant anxiety about money and knot in her stomach since Graham's death finally began to ease. Reader emails came every day now. Women her age, older, younger. They wrote about feeling invisible, about being dismissed, about reading Helena, and feeling seen for the first time. Nora answered every single one, each reply a quiet act of connection. The confidence that had been growing settled in her bones, firm and undeniable. She was a writer, not someone who wrote as a hobby, not someone filling time. A real writer with 4 published books and a 5th one due in 2 months. Book 5 was different. Darker. Helena was 65 now, the same age as Nora. She'd lost someone close to her and was questioning everything. The words came hard, but they came true. She was deep in chapter 12 when her phone rang, Julian's name on the screen. She let it go to voicemail, called him back an hour later when she'd finished the scene. "Hey, Mum. Did you get my message? Sorry I was writing. What's up? I need your help. Big favor." Something in his tone, a familiar edge of urgency, made Nora save her document. "What kind of favor?" "The firm is doing our annual charity gala. It's huge this year. We're raising money for children's literacy, and I'm heading up the whole thing. Mr. Caldwell is going to be there, all the partners. I'm up for senior manager, so this has to be perfect." "That sounds important. What do you need?" "Honestly, everything. Vendor coordination, seating charts, day of management. It's in 3 weeks and I'm drowning. Serena is slammed with this campaign at work, and I thought, you know you're home anyway. You're not busy, right? I mean, just writing. This is really important for me, Mum." Nora looked at her laptop. Chapter 12 was half done. Her deadline was 8 weeks away. Vivian had mentioned important meetings coming up, potential opportunities she wanted to discuss. "I have a deadline in 2 months, and Vivian has some things scheduled." 2 months is plenty of time. This is just 3 weeks. "Come on, Mum. I really need you." The old pull, the familiar weight, tugged at her. The need to be needed, the instinct to smooth Julian's path. The small voice that had always whispered, "Say yes." "Of course, honey. What do you need?" He exhaled a relieved whoosh of air. "Everything, honestly. Can you come by tomorrow? I'll give you all the details." Vendor list, budget, seating, chart, template. You're so good at organizing this kind of stuff. They hung up. Nora sat at her kitchen table, looking at the document still open on her screen. Chapter 12. Could wait a day. 3 weeks wasn't that long. She'd finish book 5 after the gala. Julian needed her. The next 3 weeks blurred together. Nora called florists about centerpiece options, coordinated with caterers, about menu restrictions, created seating charts for 200 guests, moving names around until Julian approved, confirmed the venue. The parking, the audio-visual setup, followed up with the printing company about programs, checked and rechecked the timeline for the evening. It was a dizzying whirlwind of details, a performance she executed with practiced efficiency. She was an invisible hand, ensuring Julian's triumph. Vivienne called in week 2. "Nora, we need to talk about these meetings you keep rescheduling. There's significant interest in your work right now, time-sensitive interest. You're missing important opportunities." "I know. I'm sorry. It's just 3 more weeks. Family thing. After the gala, I'll be fully available again." Vivienne sighed, the kind of sigh that said she'd had this conversation with other clients who'd made the wrong choice. "All right. But you're turning down significant interest. I hope this is worth it." Nora didn't ask what the interest was. Didn't have time. Julian needed updated numbers for the donations tracker. The caterer had questions about the vegetarian options. The venue needed a final head count. Serena stopped by one afternoon while Nora was on the phone with the florist. She let herself in, set her expensive leather purse on Nora's counter. "Still working on the gala stuff?" she asked when Nora hung up. "Just confirming the flower delivery time. That's great. I mean, you're home all day anyway, right? It's not like you have a real office to go to. Nora looked at her expensive handbag and her silk blouse and her nails that someone else had painted. I have deadlines, Serena, for my books. Oh, right. Your books. Serena smiled. Julian appreciates this. You know he's so stressed with the real work, the client stuff. This helps him out a lot. The real work, as opposed to Nora's books, which were apparently not real work. Serena left before Nora could figure out what to say. Julian called that night. Nora was trying to write, staring at chapter 12 with no idea what came next. She'd been away from it for 10 days, and the thread had gone cold. Mum, the seating chart is wrong. You have the Anderson group at table 7, but they can't sit near the Williams family. There's bad blood there. Can you fix it, Julian? I'm trying to write. Can this wait until tomorrow? Not really. I need to send the final chart to the venue by morning. It'll take you like 10 minutes. He wasn't asking. He was telling her this was more important than whatever she was doing. I'll fix it tonight. Thanks. You're a lifesaver. Oh, and the caterer keeps calling me about the gluten-free options. Can you just be the point person for that? I don't have time for this stuff. Sure. Thanks, Mum. I've got to run client dinner. Talk tomorrow. He hung up. Nora closed her manuscript and opened the seating chart. Her publisher emailed the next day. Nora, we need the manuscript. Are you on track for the deadline? She looked at chapter 12. Still unfinished. 6 more chapters to go. 8 weeks until deadline. The math wasn't working. Yes, almost done. She typed back a lie that tasted bitter. She wasn't almost done. She wasn't even close. She was exhausted. 1 week before the gala, she spent all day at the venue coordinating final setup, where the registration table would go, how the stage would be positioned, where to put the donation display. The event coordinator had questions every 15 minutes. Nora got home at 7, opened her laptop, stared at the words on the screen. Nothing came. Her brain was full of seating charts and vendor confirmations, and Julian's voice saying this was really important for him. She hadn't written in 3 days, the longest gap since she'd started book 5. The venue coordinator called with another question. She answered it, closed the laptop, made tea she didn't drink. Nora was at the venue again the next afternoon, checking on the floral delivery, when she heard voices in the hallway. Julian and Serena. She was about to call out to them when Serena's voice carried clearly through the corridor, sharp and amused. At least your mum has something now with her books. Remember when she was just nothing? Nora froze, her clipboard clutched in her hand, the flower order form blurring. Nothing. That's what Serena thought she'd been. Nothing. Julian's voice responded, a low murmur Nora couldn't make out over the sudden ringing in her ears. A sickening dread coiled in her gut. She remembered Julian's confident swagger, his talk of 6-figure deals and being on the partner track to impress Caldwell. What if there was more to this gala than just children's literacy? What if his ambition had crossed a line, and she, Nora, had unwittingly become an instrument in something far darker? She remembered Vivian's words. You're turning down significant interest. I hope this is worth it. And Serena's casual dismissal when she was just nothing. And Julian's constant refrain. You're not busy, right? Just writing. A new thread, cold and hard, began to pull in her mind. She thought about the endless financial reports Julian had dismissed into her lap, the labyrinthine budget spreadsheets she'd organized, the vendor contracts she'd reviewed. Some of the figures had seemed off, not overtly wrong, but unusual. She had dismissed it then as simply the complicated nature of high-stakes corporate charity. Now a shiver traced down her spine. Julian's desperate need for this gala to be perfect for Mr. Caldwell and the partners. His utter disdain for her hobby cloaked his every demand. She drove home in silence, the ringing in her ears slowly subsiding, replaced by a growing suspicion. She sat at her kitchen table, opened her laptop, but instead of her manuscript, she navigated to the digital copies of the gala's financial records Julian had given her. She had meticulously organized them. Now she began to review them not as an event planner, but with the sharp, observant eye of her character, Helena. There was a discrepancy in the catering budget, a hefty sum allocated to contingency that seemed excessive, and a significant recurring consulting fee paid to a shell company. It wasn't the children's literacy charity that seemed to be benefiting from this arrangement. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She wasn't just fixing a seating chart anymore. She was hunting. The name Caldwell Julian's senior partner appeared again and again in the unusual transactions. She also recalled Julian's repeated boasts about how impressed Caldwell was with him, how Caldwell was the key to his partnership track. A cold certainty settled over her. Julian was either complicit or a very convenient pawn. She remembered an old friend, Leo Maxwell, who worked as a cybersecurity consultant for a major tech firm. A quiet, brilliant man with an ethical streak as wide as the Grand Canyon. He'd helped her once years ago with a phishing scam on her bank account, doing it for free just because she was a friend of his mother's. She found his number, a quick message, Leo, urgent. Need your expertise. Will explain everything later. Can you meet discreetly? His reply came within minutes. Name the place. Nora. She looked at the calendar. 1 week until the gala. Then she could go back to her life. Back to Helena in chapter 12, and being Elara Thorne instead of Julian's mum, who had nothing better to do. But now another purpose far more urgent burned within her. After the gala, she told herself. After the gala, she'd set boundaries. She'd say no. She'd put her work first. She'd been telling herself that for 3 weeks. Now her work had become intertwined with something far more dangerous. Leo met her the next evening at a quiet coffee shop, disguised as a casual meeting. He listened, his face impassive, as Nora laid out her suspicions, showing him the financial discrepancies she'd uncovered. This consulting firm is a ghost, Nora, he confirmed after a few swift checks on his laptop. No legitimate business. Money is being siphoned. And Caldwell, he has a reputation for cutting corners, but nothing this blatant. Julian is trying to impress him. He said Caldwell is the key to his partnership. Then Julian is either incredibly naive or willingly blind. This charity gala, if these funds are meant to be tied to it, is being used for something else entirely. I need proof. Undeniable proof. Something to expose Caldwell and perhaps even Julian's complicity without jeopardizing the genuine charity. Leo nodded, his eyes alight with the challenge. A recording. We need to capture them. Caldwell is known for a distinctive booming laugh when he thinks he's gotten away with something. Nora's heart hammered. A distinctive laugh. The thought ignited a cold fire in her veins. This wasn't just about vindication anymore. This was about justice. She and Leo worked in secret, building a strategy. Leo advised Nora on where to place discreet recording devices at the venue, focusing on areas where Caldwell and other partners might confer privately. He also set up a secure channel for her to transmit live audio discreetly to him. At the gala, if you hear anything at all, send it. I'll be listening, ready to analyze. And I'll have a broadcast quality version queued up just in case. In case of what? In case you decide to make a very public statement. He offered a small conspiratorial smile. And if you want to, Nora, I can have that audio played over the main sound system linked to the auction feed. An anonymous tip from a concerned citizen, perhaps, or, well, from Elara Thorne. Nora's mind raced. The public humiliation Julian was so intent on inflicting, the nothing Serena had called her, would be overshadowed by a revelation that could bring down powerful men. She felt a surge of cold fury mixed with an unexpected exhilaration. This was Helena's world now. She returned to the gala preparations, her outward demeanor unchanged, but inside a hunter was stirring. She continued to manage the seating charts, the catering, the flowers. Every detail now scrutinized through a new lens. She even found a way to strategically place a small, high-fidelity recorder near the head table, disguised as a decorative boutonniere. She sent Leo the coordinates, confirmed the setup. Julian called again, his demands as incessant as ever. Mum Caldwell insists on a last-minute change to the auction items. He wants to personally oversee the final additions. Can you ensure the auctioneer is prepped? Of course, Julian. Anything for the charity. Her voice was calm, steady. She was feigning submission, playing her part. She knew with chilling certainty that the gala would not just be his night. The gala was on a Saturday night at the Grand Colonial in La Jolla. The venue Nora had spent 3 weeks coordinating the flowers. She'd ordered the seating chart, she'd rewritten 6 times the timeline she'd created down to the minute. She arrived at 6 an hour before guests. Julian was there with Serena, both of them in formal wear. He looked sharp in his tuxedo. Important, like someone who belonged in rooms like this. Mum, you made it. He kissed her cheek. Everything looks perfect. You did an amazing job. Nora was wearing a simple, elegant black dress she'd bought online, a stark contrast to Serena's shimmering designer gown. Serena's eyes swept over Nora once. She didn't say anything, neither did Julian. 200 guests arrived over the next hour. Crystal chandeliers overhead, white tablecloths, centerpieces with white roses. It really did look perfect. Mr. Caldwell arrived with his wife Lillian. Nora recognized him from the photos Julian had shown her. Silver hair, an expensive suit, tailored to perfection. Julian's entire future, or at least what he thought was his future, walking through the door. Caldwell took a seat at the head table with the other senior partners. Nora found her seat at table 12 in the back. Not with Julian and Serena, who were at table 1 with the firm's leadership. The place card had her name written in calligraphy. She sat down between an elderly couple. She didn't know their conversation, a gentle hum. She discreetly tapped the small device hidden in her clutch, confirming the link to Leo. Live audio feed active. A silent message blinked on her phone screen. Julian was working the room, shaking hands, laughing at jokes. Serena beside him, her hand on his arm, a picture of polished partnership. They looked like they belonged together, like they belonged here. Nora watched him from table 12 and felt a strange mix of pride and a cold, detached anticipation. This was his night, his moment to shine, or perhaps to unravel. Dinner started. Salad, then the main course. Nora picked at her food. Her senses heightened, observing the room, listening intently to the subtle murmurs transmitted from the hidden boutonniere. Everyone was having a good time. The event was a success, at least on the surface. The auction started after dinner. The auctioneer was professional, energetic. Items went up one by one. Private golf lessons with the firm's CEO went for $25,000. A weekend at an exclusive Cabo resort with private yacht access for $40,000. A rare wine collection, vintage 1982 Bordeaux, for $35,000. The totals kept climbing. Julian stood near the stage watching the numbers. Nora could see him relaxing. The money was pouring in. Mr. Caldwell was smiling, his booming laugh echoing faintly across the room as he spoke with a fellow partner. The partners were pleased. Julian had pulled this off. The auction kept going. Julian was loose now, joking with people at his table. Nora saw him lean over to Serena, whisper something. Serena laughed, nodded, said something back. He looked around the room with this satisfied smile. Everything was going perfectly. The money was rolling in. Caldwell was pleased. He'd pulled this off. Then Julian stood up, walked toward the microphone. Something in the way he moved made Nora's chest tighten. That confident swagger, the grin on his face. He grabbed the microphone, tapped it twice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special last-minute item." Nora knew right then. She knew something bad was about to happen. From the head table, Caldwell caught Julian's eye, offering a brief, almost imperceptible nod and a wide, mirthless smile. A shiver ran down Nora's spine. And then there it was, Caldwell's distinct booming laugh, a deep, guttural sound that carried even above the general chatter. And at that exact moment, through the discreet earpiece, Leo had provided Nora heard it too clean and amplified Caldwell's laugh. But this time it was from her recording from a conversation a few nights ago, captured by the hidden device, discussing a suspicious investment fund that would be discreetly padded using a portion of the contingency allocated for the gala. Nora's finger twitched, hovering over her phone. Her tech ally Leo was on standby. She saw Caldwell leaning back in his chair, smiling at Julian the mastermind and his unwitting or perhaps complicit pawn. The laugh on the recording, the one that matched the one from the head table, wasn't one of amusement, but of a man anticipating a very lucrative deception. She quickly typed a text to Leo. "Wait. Don't play it yet. I want the big fish too." The room's attention shifted. 200 faces turning toward Julian. "I'm auctioning off lunch with my wonderful mother." And there it was, the most embarrassing moment of her life, unfolding in front of 200 people while her son smiled like he just told the funniest joke in the world. Silence, then scattered nervous laughter. People looking around to see where his mother was sitting. She sits at home writing her little mystery novels. Maybe she'll even put you in one. More uncomfortable laughter. People glancing at each other, not sure if this was a joke or serious. Nora kept perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, face neutral. Starting bid, $1. Come on. Who wants to have lunch with my mum? Complete silence now. No one was bidding. No one was laughing anymore. People were looking at her with something like pity. Some looked away, embarrassed for her, embarrassed for him. She'd had years of practice at this. Years of Julian saying things that cut without meaning to. Years of holding still while people looked at her like she was something small. Serena was beside him at table 1, smirking like this was funny, like humiliating Nora in front of 200 people was entertainment. Julian was still smiling, waiting for someone to bid to play along. No one did. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Julian's smile starting to look uncertain. Then a voice from the back, clear, calm. 1 million. The room went silent. A different kind of silent. Every head turned. A man stood up slowly, distinguished maybe 50 dark suit. He started walking toward the front. Every eye in the room following him. Julian's smile froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said $1 million. The man's voice carried clearly through the room. "I'm Peter Lawson, head of content development at Odyssey Media." Julian's face went pale. "Odyssey Media? I don't understand." Peter stopped in the center aisle, turned to address the entire room. "Not Julian. Everyone, for those who don't know this woman, is Alara Thorne, best-selling author of the Silent Witness series." A gasp from somewhere in the crowd. A woman at a nearby table pulled out her phone, started typing frantically. "Oh my God," she said loud enough for people around her to hear. "I've read all her books." Another guest stood up. "Wait, you're Alara Thorne? My entire book club is obsessed with you." A woman from table 3 exclaimed. "The Silent Witness series, Helena is my favorite character." Peter continued, his voice calm and professional. "Ms. Hartley, I've been trying to reach you for 2 months about a significant opportunity." He turned to look directly at Nora. "We want to adapt the Silent Witness series. All 4 books, full production deal with Odyssey Media. People were gasping, phones coming out. Someone took a photo. This is extremely time-sensitive, Peter said. We have a limited production window. The deal we're discussing is worth tens of millions of dollars. When your agent mentioned you were unavailable because you were helping family with a charity commitment, I did some research. Your son's firm, this gala. I took a calculated risk you'd be here. Peter turned back to the room. Ms. Hartley holds all the rights to her work. Without her approval, none of this moves forward. $1 million is more than fair for the opportunity to finally meet with her, but we need to move immediately. Every day we delay, we risk losing our production slot. The auctioneer found his voice stammered. That's the highest single donation of the entire evening. The room erupted. Applause. People standing, moving toward Nora. Can I take a photo with you? I didn't know you were local. When is book 5 coming out? Will you sign my copy? I'll buy a physical one. Julian was frozen at the microphone. Serena had gone completely white beside him. Mr. Caldwell was watching Julian. The look on Caldwell's face wasn't pride. It was disappointment. Slowly shaking his head. People were crowding around Nora asking questions, wanting photos telling her how much Helena meant to them. Julian had always said, "That's nice, Mum, in the voice you use for a child showing you a crayon drawing." Serena called it a hobby. Nora was too old, too late doing something that wasn't real work. And now 200 people knew her name. A woman Nora's age grabbed her hand. Her eyes were wet. "You made me feel visible again." "Thank you." Nora had spent most of her life invisible. To Graham, to Julian, even to herself sometimes. But not to these people. Not to the readers who wrote her emails. Not to the women who saw themselves in Helena. Julian was still standing at the microphone watching this, finally seeing what Nora had been trying to tell him. Mr. Caldwell stood up from the head table, walked over. The crowd parted for him. "Ms. Hartley," he said, his voice clipped. "I just learned you're Elara Thorne. My wife Lillian is a huge fan of your work. She's read all 4 books. I had no idea Julian's mother was you. He never mentioned it. Julian's son hadn't told him. Hadn't mentioned it because to Julian what Nora did wasn't worth mentioning. I use a pen name," Nora said, her voice clear and steady. "It keeps things separate." Caldwell shook his head slowly. "We would have been honored to have you at our table. A best-selling author. An Odyssey Media deal. This is remarkable, truly remarkable." Julian had called it keeping her occupied. "My wife tells me book 3 changed how she saw herself after retirement." Caldwell continued, oblivious to the deeper sting of his words. She felt invisible. Your character gave her hope. Nora could see Julian across the room, watching his boss shake her hand, watching her be someone he'd never bothered to see. Caldwell's wife Lillian appeared beside him. "Ms. Hartley, I can't believe it's you. I've read all 4 of your books. I finished book 4 last month. Helena is incredible. You've been sitting here all evening and Julian never told us." She glanced toward Julian. Her voice cooled. "Your son is very fortunate to have you." Peter appeared beside Nora. "Ms. Hartley, shall we find somewhere quieter to talk? Odyssey Media is eager to make this happen." He gestured towards a discreet exit. Nora looked around the room one more time. At the people still wanting to talk to her, at Serena. Pale and stiff in her chair, at Julian, standing alone where he'd humiliated her 10 minutes ago. She looked at Caldwell, whose smile had faded, replaced by a calculating, worried frown. The distinct laugh from her recording echoed in her mind. "Yes," Nora said. A new resolve hardening her voice. "Let's talk about my books, not her little mystery novels, not her hobby, her books." She walked toward the exit, with Peter past Julian's table. She made herself look at him. He looked back at her like he'd never seen her before, like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd been a stranger to him all along, and he just never bothered to notice. The cool air hit her face as they stepped outside. Peter was already talking about production schedules and casting ideas. But Nora was still thinking about that room, about Julian's face, about Caldwell's disappointment, about people finally seeing her, about feeling visible for the first time in her life. The recording the deeper betrayal remained locked in her mind. She had exposed Julian's casual cruelty, but the full reckoning was yet to come. She had the big fish on the hook, and she wasn't ready to reel it in just yet. Nora talked with Peter for an hour outside the venue, discussing production timelines, casting ideas, rights negotiations. He was professional, enthusiastic. His words a testament to the reality of her success. This was real. This was happening. When she finally got home, her phone had 17 missed calls, 12 texts. She turned it off and went to bed, letting the silence be her balm. The next morning, she sat at her kitchen table with coffee laptop open but not writing yet. Her phone was still off. She wasn't ready to look at the messages, wasn't ready to process what had happened. The doorbell rang at 9. She looked through the peephole. Julian. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not his usual impeccably tailored work clothes. His eyes were red-shadowed. He looked like he hadn't slept. Nora opened the door. Didn't say anything. Just stepped back to let him in. He came inside, stood awkwardly in her living room, the same living room where he'd eaten dinner 100 times, where he'd dismissed her work, where Serena had called her apartment cozy. Nora sat at the kitchen table, waited. He sat across from her, opened his mouth, closed. It tried again. Mum, He stopped, started over. Mr. Caldwell pulled me aside after you left. Nora didn't say anything, just took a sip of coffee. She let him keep talking. He asked me how I could speak about my own mother that way in front of clients, in front of everyone. Julian's voice was rough, cracking. He said it showed poor judgment, poor character, that the way someone treats their family says everything about who they really are. Poor judgment, Nora thought, recalling Caldwell's distinct laugh, the one captured on her hidden recorder. Poor character, indeed. She maintained a neutral expression, letting him wrestle with his sudden public humiliation. I thought I was being funny. I thought it was just a harmless joke. His voice fractured. But it wasn't harmless. And your work isn't something to joke about. It never was. Nora set her cup down, the gentle clink echoing in the silence. No, Julian. It's not a hobby. It's my career. It's who I am. His eyes still bloodshot, filled with tears. Odyssey Media, $1 million donation, USA Today bestseller. And I called your work little mystery novels in front of everyone. I auctioned you off for $1 like you were nothing. He swallowed hard, a raw, visible effort. You gave up everything for me. He continued, the words tumbling out, laced with a belated, agonizing guilt. Working all those years to put me through university, your dreams, your whole life. And I treated your success like it was nothing, like it didn't count, because it wasn't what I do. You did, Nora said quietly, her voice calm, devoid of accusation, which only seemed to make him more distraught. I tried to tell you. You never actually listened. I'm so sorry. He was openly crying now, tears tracing paths down his pale cheeks. I don't have an excuse. I was stupid and selfish and I hurt you. I'm so sorry, Mum. The old pull was there. The instinct to smooth this over, to say it's okay, to make him feel better, to be the mother who fixed everything. But it wasn't okay, and Nora wasn't going to say it was. I love you, she said. I'll always love you, but things have to change between us. He leaned forward, desperate. Anything. Tell me what you need, please. Nora took a breath, feeling the shift of power. A quiet, almost imperceptible tremor in the air between them. I need you to stop expecting me to drop everything when you call. I have deadlines. I have meetings that matter. My work is real work, Julian, not something to fill my time. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I need you to actually listen when I talk about my work, not just nod and change the subject to your life. And I need you to understand that I'm not just your mother. I'm Nora. I'm a writer. I have my own life that doesn't revolve around you. You're right, he said, his voice small. All of it. I'll do better. I swear I'll do better. You have a chance to prove that, Nora said, her gaze steady. But I'm done sacrificing myself to make your life easier. Those days are over. Can I make this right? His voice was almost a whisper. Can we fix this? We can try, she said. But you have to actually try, not just say you will. He nodded, hesitated. Serena wanted to come too. She's ashamed of how she treated you. She's been crying since last night. She can call me when she's ready. Nora said, a faint smile touching her lips. But you came here first. That means something. Start by reading one of my books. Actually reading it, not skimming, not pretending. Actually read it and tell me what you think. He laughed through his tears, a shaky, broken sound. I'll read all 4. I should have read them a long time ago. I should have been your biggest supporter instead of your biggest critic. Yes, Nora said. You should have. They sat there for a minute. Then he stood. Nora stood too. He hugged her. It felt different this time. Not the easy and casual embrace of old. This was a hug of recognition of boundaries drawn and acknowledged. I love you, Mum. I love you too. He left. Nora watched him walk to his car from the window, watched him drive away. Then she sat back down at her kitchen table, opened her laptop. The Book 5 manuscript was still there. Chapter 12. The one she hadn't been able to finish because she'd been too exhausted from planning his gala. An email from her publisher was waiting. Nora. Everything okay? Just checking in on deadline. She wrote back, her fingers flying with renewed purpose. Need 2 more weeks. Personal situation resolved. The story will be better for it. The response came within minutes. Take the time you need. We trust you. Her phone was still off. She turned it on. 17 more messages had come in overnight. Vivian Peter Lawson readers who'd somehow found her number. She'd look at them later. The phone rang, Julian's name on the screen. She looked at it, then at her manuscript. Chapter 12 was waiting. Helena was waiting. She let it go to voicemail. She'd call him back later. Right now she needed to finish this chapter. A small smile spread across her face. The apartment was quiet. The coffee was still warm. The words were starting to come back rich and vibrant. For the first time in her life, she'd chosen herself, and it felt profoundly, gloriously right. The following week was a whirlwind of meetings. Peter Lawson and his team from Odyssey Media flew in, and Nora met them in a sleek, glass-walled office overlooking the churning Pacific. Vivian Shaw, Nora's agent, was a formidable presence. Her sharp intellect and unwavering support, a stark contrast to Julian's dismissals. The contract for the Silent Witness series adaptation was indeed worth tens of millions, a dizzying sum that Nora still struggled to comprehend. She listened, asked questions, her mind absorbing every detail of the production schedule, casting choices, and marketing strategies. It was a world away from her quiet apartment, a world she was now firmly a part of. She found a strange energy in these negotiations, a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. She had always been observant, a skill she'd honed over years of watching people, listening to their unspoken cues, which now served her well. She signed the papers, the ink on the page, a tangible representation of her new reality. The deal was announced 2 days later. The news broke like a dam, a torrent of media attention. Articles appeared in the LA Times, The Hollywood Reporter, and countless online publications, all extolling the late-blooming literary sensation, Ilara Thorne, and her beloved protagonist, Helena. She gave her first interviews, carefully crafted words, guided by Vivian, revealing just enough to intrigue, never betraying the quiet woman behind the pen name. Amidst this, Julian's attempts at reconciliation were persistent, if clumsy. He sent flowers, called every evening, his voice tinged with a new, unsettling deference. He even started reading her books. He'd text her questions, Mum does. Helena suspect the mayor in Chapter 8. Nora would offer cryptic replies, a small game they played, a faint echo of the mysteries she wrote. He even suggested dinner, just the two of them, no Serena. Nora agreed, choosing a quiet restaurant where they wouldn't be disturbed. At dinner, he was earnest, almost desperate to please. I finished Silent Witness, he said, pushing his plate away, having barely touched his meal. It was incredible, Mum. I had no idea. Helena is so smart, so utterly brilliant. He paused, looking directly at her, his eyes filled with genuine regret. I was an idiot. I dismissed you. I was so focused on my own ambitions, I couldn't see yours. I'm truly sorry. Nora acknowledged his apology with a soft nod, a small, sad smile. I know, Julian, you were. He shifted, picking at a loose thread on the tablecloth. About Caldwell. He's been acting strange since the gala. Very cagey about the charity accounts. I heard some whispers about internal audits. Nora's pulse quickened, but her expression remained serene. Oh, that's concerning. Especially for a charity for children's literacy. She watched him waiting. He's putting a lot of pressure on me to tighten up the firm's books. Julian continued, oblivious to the double meaning his words held for her. He mentioned how well I handled the gala's financial summaries, how organized everything was. How organized I was, Nora corrected silently. She had kept copies of everything. Every spreadsheet, every suspicious invoice she'd flagged, every transaction she'd found questionable, just as Helena would. Julian. She began, a hint of concern in her voice. You're not getting involved in anything less than transparent, are you? Your reputation at the firm is everything. He quickly shook his head. No, Mum, of course not. I'm trying to be careful. Caldwell's just a very demanding partner. He looked anxious, clearly worried about his own position. He implied that if anything went wrong with any of the firm's events or finances, he'd hold me personally responsible. Said I was in charge of the gala, after all. The words sent a chill down Nora's spine. Caldwell was not only corrupt, but cunning, clearly setting Julian up as a scapegoat. Nora's resolve solidified. She couldn't let that happen. Julian might have been selfish and dismissive, but he was still her son. He was a pawn, not the king. Julian, she said, her voice dropping. I know you're a meticulous record keeper. If anything ever seemed out of place, even slightly, make sure you keep your own separate copies of all communications, all approvals. For your own protection. He looked surprised. Why, just good business practice, Nora hedged, offering a reassuring smile that hid the steel beneath. You never know when you might need to prove your diligence. She watched him absorb her words, a flicker of something new, awareness perhaps, or caution in his eyes. The seed was planted. Meanwhile, Nora continued her shadow investigation with Leo Maxwell. Using her new fame as Ilara Thorne was a surprising advantage. She arranged a series of research interviews for Book 5, weaving in questions about corporate finance and charity regulations with legal and financial experts. No one suspected she was investigating her son's firm. I need to understand the psychology of financial crime for my new antagonist. She'd explain her words perfectly plausible. She'd meet with former FBI agents, forensic accountants, even a retired prosecutor gleaning insights into shell companies' embezzlement schemes and the subtle art of covering tracks. Every conversation yielded a new piece of the puzzle, a different angle on Caldwell's potential manipulations. Leo, meanwhile, delved deeper into the data Nora had provided. This children's literacy fund is registered, but its activities are minimal, he reported during one of their encrypted video calls. Most of the funds, particularly those from the contingency budget you flagged, are routed through a series of offshore accounts. It's a classic money laundering setup, Nora. Caldwell is using the charity as a front to funnel money into his own pockets, likely with a few co-conspirators. And Julian, Nora asked, her voice tight. He's listed as the primary event manager, and his signature is on several key authorizations. He appears to be either negligent or a knowing participant. If this goes public, Nora, he'll be caught in the crossfire. Nora felt a familiar pang of maternal dread, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fierce determination. She wouldn't let Julian be destroyed by Caldwell's greed, not entirely. He needed to face consequences for his arrogance and blindness, but not for a crime he hadn't fully orchestrated. She began to discreetly collect more evidence. She obtained public records of Caldwell's past business dealings, finding a pattern of aggressive, borderline unethical practices. She even managed to get an old contact from her Dalton insurance days to covertly retrieve some of Julian's old work emails, ostensibly for character research for her books. These emails, when cross-referenced with the financial records, began to paint a clearer picture. Julian, eager to impress Caldwell and climb the corporate ladder, had signed off on financial decisions and authorized payments without fully scrutinizing them, blinded by his ambition and trust in his mentor. He was negligent, yes, but the intent to defraud was clearly Caldwell's. One afternoon, Julian called Nora, his voice tight, with barely suppressed panic. Mom Caldwell just fired his assistant Sarah. She was the one who handled most of the charity's accounts before I took over for the gala. He said she made grave errors. Nora's mind raced. Sarah, Julian's former assistant, had been the initial point of contact for many of the dodgy transactions Nora had flagged. Caldwell was cleaning house, eliminating loose ends. This was a critical development. Julian, Nora said, "Do you remember Sarah's contact details? I'd like to reach out to her for my research. A character in my next book is a former executive assistant, and I need insights." Julian, still reeling, quickly provided the number, eager to help his now famous author mother. Nora thanked him, her heart thumping with a mix of urgency and trepidation. Sarah might be the final piece of the puzzle. She contacted Sarah, carefully explaining her research premise, gently probing for details about her time working under Caldwell. Sarah, still bitter and resentful about her abrupt termination, was initially guarded. But when Nora, sensing a deeper unease, gently hinted at the financial irregularities she'd discovered in her research, Sarah's defenses crumbled. She revealed that Caldwell had pressured her to sign off on unusual transfers, always insisting it was standard procedure for charity events. She had expressed concerns, but Caldwell had dismissed them, reminding her of her at-will employment. She even admitted to secretly copying some of the more egregious transaction logs, a small act of defiance she'd never known how to use. "I didn't want to get Julian into trouble," Sarah confessed, her voice thick with worry. He was so eager to please Caldwell, so trusting. He just signed whatever Caldwell put in front of him. This was it. The smoking gun. Nora arranged to meet Sarah in person, ensuring the copies of the transaction logs were transferred securely to Leo. Book 5. The Unseen Hand was finished and sent to Vivian. It was the darkest, most complex mystery. She'd written the villain, a ruthless corporate climber who used a charity as a front for his avarice. The echoes of Caldwell were undeniable, but veiled enough to be fictional. Vivian declared it her best work, yet securing an even larger advance and a major promotional tour. Nora was no longer just a best-selling author. She was a literary force, her work lauded for its sharp social commentary and astute psychological insights. Julian, meanwhile, was slowly but surely starting to read Nora's books, not just skimming. He'd call to discuss plot points, genuinely engaged. even if he still occasionally slipped into calling Helena's deductions clever for an old lady. He was growing, however, incrementally. Serena, too, had changed her tune. She called one afternoon, her voice unusually deferential. "Nora, I just wanted to apologize for how I spoke about your writing at the gala. Julian explained what an incredible author you are. I really do hope you can forgive me." Nora accepted the apology, a cool politeness masking her continued wariness. She knew genuine remorse was often a slow-growing plant. The day of Book 5's release, Nora received a text from Julian. "Mum Caldwell just called me into his office. He wants me to finalize some charity reports for the year-end review. He seems stressed. He keeps asking about discrepancies and said he wants to tie up loose ends before the partners' annual retreat next week." Nora's heart pounded. This was it. The partners' retreat was their last chance to expose Caldwell before he buried the evidence for good. The final chapter of her real-life thriller was about to unfold. She had everything: the financial records, Sarah's corroborating testimony, the old emails from Julian, and most importantly, Caldwell's own booming, incriminating laugh on the original recording, talking about how he was milking the charity dry. She called Leo. "It's time," she said, her voice steady. "Caldwell is making his move. The partners' retreat is next week. We need to act before then." "Understood, Nora." Leo replied, his tone grim. "I've got everything compiled. The recording, the paper trail. It's airtight. We just need the right moment to present it." "I have an idea," Nora said, a glint in her eyes. "Julian is presenting the annual charity reports to Caldwell and the other partners tomorrow morning. He'll be in Caldwell's office. This is our window," Risky Leo cautioned. "What if Julian is implicated too severely?" "He's been blind, Leo, not malicious. He needs to see the truth, and he needs a chance to set it right. I'm not going to let him go down for Caldwell's crimes. But Caldwell needs to be exposed in a way that is utterly undeniable." They formulated the plan. Leo would remotely access the firm's network, ensuring that the evidence Nora had gathered, including the audio recording, would be accessible through a disguised file on the main server. Nora would make sure Julian, unwitting, would inadvertently open it. The following morning, Nora sent Julian a text. "Good luck with the charity report presentation today. Remember what we talked about. Always have your own backups. I just sent you a small file, a good luck charm for your presentation. Open it when Caldwell is looking. It'll remind him how good you are with details." A good luck charm. Julian would never suspect. It was a Trojan horse, disguised as a personalized template for his report, but embedded within it was the digital key that would unlock Caldwell's carefully constructed house of cards. Nora felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and exhilarating. She was not just writing the story anymore, she was living it. She had moved from observer to architect, from victim to avenger. The feeling was intoxicating. The firm's executive offices were a silent, gleaming monument to power and wealth. Julian, dressed in a sharp suit, walked with a purposeful stride towards Caldwell's private office, the leather folder containing his charity report clutched in his hand. He was nervous, but also determined. Caldwell had been putting immense pressure on him, and Julian knew this presentation was crucial. He felt a pang of gratitude for his mother's advice, for her thoughtful good luck charm file she'd sent. He'd opened it briefly on his own laptop, a simple, elegant report template that had indeed felt like a small boost of confidence. He planned to open it on Caldwell's main screen, a subtle flex of his tech savviness. Inside Caldwell's office, the air was thick with the scent of old money and new ambition. Caldwell sat at his expansive mahogany desk, flanked by two other senior partners, Mr. Thorne and Ms. Davis. Their expressions were stern, their attention focused on Julian. "Good morning, Julian," Caldwell said, his voice smooth, but Nora knew from the recordings the dangerous currents that lay beneath it. "Ready to walk us through the year's charity expenditures?" "Yes, Mr. Caldwell." Julian opened his laptop, connecting it to the large wall-mounted screen. He navigated to his presentation. He saw Nora's good luck charm file on his desktop, and remembering her suggestion to open it, he clicked on it. The screen flared, displaying his immaculate report. But then an unexpected pop-up appeared. A small, discreet window titled Supplemental Data. Julian frowned, confused. He hadn't put that there. "What is that, Julian?" Mr. Thorne asked, his voice sharp. Julian flustered, tried to close it, but his mouse seemed to freeze. Then a click. The small window expanded, transforming the pristine report into a damning exposé. On the screen, a series of complex financial charts, transaction logs, and shell company registrations, unfurled meticulously, detailing the siphoning of millions from the charity fund into Caldwell's personal accounts. And then the audio began to play, clear and undeniable. Caldwell's own booming laugh, followed by his voice distinct and chilling, just milking the charity dry lads. And Julian there, bless his ambitious heart, signs off on everything without a peep. Such a good boy. The sound filled the silent office, reverberating off the polished walls, laying bare Caldwell's corruption. Julian stood frozen, his face draining of colour, the full horror of what he had unwittingly facilitated crashing down on him. Caldwell, initially stunned, lunged for the laptop, but the screen was locked, the incriminating evidence playing on an endless loop. His face contorted not in anger but in pure, raw panic. Mr. Thorne and Ms. Davis exchanged a look of profound shock and betrayal. Their faces hardened, transforming from stern attention to cold, professional fury. The image of the meticulous charts, the fraudulent transactions, and Caldwell's smug, contemptuous voice were an undeniable testament to his guilt. Julian looked at the screen, at the meticulous detailing of Caldwell's fraud, at his own signature on several of the authorizing documents, all highlighted, all framed by the chilling audio. He finally understood. His mother's advice about backups, her quiet probe into financial transparency, it all clicked into place. Nora hadn't given him a good luck charm. She had given him the sword to cut through Caldwell's web of lies, and in doing so had exposed him to the painful truth of his own naivety. He looked at Caldwell, who was now stammering, trying to deny everything, sweat beading on his temples. The mask had fallen, revealing the true face of the man Julian had idolized, the man he had been so desperate to impress. The disgust was visceral, a wave of nausea. "Julian," Mr. Thorne said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you know about this, Julian?" His voice, barely a whisper, looked from the screen to Caldwell, then to the partners. "No." He choked out, shame and anger battling in his chest. "No, I didn't. I trusted him. He said it was standard. My mother, she told me to look closer at the details. She saw it somehow. She warned me." He looked at the screen again, at his own signature, at the detailed evidence of his unwitting complicity. "I kept my own copies of everything he said," pulling another folder from his bag, a raw honesty in his voice now. "Every email, every instruction from Mr. Caldwell." The partners turned their gazes from the incriminating screen to Caldwell, then to Julian. The implication was clear. Julian was indeed entangled, but he was also the one providing the additional evidence, the one who had, however, blindly kept the records. He had unknowingly acted as Nora's instrument. Nora, miles away, knew the game was afoot. Her phone buzzed. A text from Leo Playback confirmed. "Emergency shutdown activated on main server to prevent deletion. External authorities notified. The big fish was caught." And Julian, her son, was finally seeing the darkness for himself. The silence in Caldwell's office would be deafening. The truth, once unearthed, would reshape everything. The fallout was swift and brutal. Caldwell was arrested that afternoon, escorted from the firm in handcuffs, his carefully constructed empire crumbling around him. The partners launched an immediate full-scale investigation, turning over every stone. Julian, for his part, was suspended his future at the firm hanging by a thread. He spent the next few days in a haze of interviews with internal investigators and eventually federal agents. He was terrified, ashamed, and profoundly disillusioned. He called Nora repeatedly, his voice now devoid of arrogance, replaced by a desperate need for guidance. "Mum, they're asking about everything. My involvement in the charity, my signing off on Caldwell's requests. I don't know what to do." Nora, always his mother, but now also his strategist, calmly advised him. "Tell them the truth, Julian. Tell them everything you know, exactly how it happened. Show them every email, every document. Cooperate fully. Your honesty is your only defense now." She sent him more resources, legal contacts. Vivian had vetted people who specialized in protecting whistleblowers or unwitting participants in corporate fraud. She also made sure to provide the investigators with the original audio recording of Caldwell's confession and the detailed financial analysis Leo had prepared. It meticulously highlighted Caldwell's intent and the distinct difference between his deliberate fraud and Julian's negligent oversight. It showed that while Julian's signatures were on documents, the actual instructions and the complex routing of funds were orchestrated by Caldwell. The narrative began to shift. Julian was a victim of his own ambition, and Caldwell's manipulation, not a co-conspirator. The firm, eager to distance itself from the scandal and protect its image, accepted this version, emphasizing Julian's full cooperation and his role in uncovering the fraud, albeit posthumously. A week later, Julian called her. His voice weary, but with a faint glimmer of hope. "They're not pressing charges against me, Mom. The firm is letting me go, but without public disgrace. They're even letting me resign instead of firing me. And Caldwell? He's facing serious charges. Federal fraud embezzlement. That's good, Julian." Nora said, relief washing over her. "It's a second chance. A chance to build something real on your own terms. They're going to put out a press release detailing how I helped bring down Caldwell." He admitted, a note of cynicism in his voice that Nora hadn't heard before. "The firm wants to save face. I'm taking the fall for carelessness, but they're making me look like a hero for discovering the fraud. It's a bitter pill to swallow being used like that, but I suppose it's better than jail." He paused, then added, "But Mum, I know the truth. You found it. You gave me the courage to see it." Nora smiled faintly. Sometimes, Julian, seeing the truth is the hardest part. Julian left the finance firm. He went quiet for a while, a period of introspection Nora had never seen from him. He kept reading her books, calling her to discuss Helena's moral dilemmas, her choices. He started volunteering at a local charity one for children's literacy, ironically, but a legitimate one this time. Serena, however, was a different story. The scandal had tainted Julian, and by extension, her own carefully constructed social image. She wanted nothing to do with a man whose career was now in ruins. Their engagement was quietly broken off, another casualty of Caldwell's corruption and Julian's blind ambition. Nora felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of inevitability. Serena belonged to the world of superficiality that Nora had so definitively left behind. Nora, meanwhile, was soaring. The Unseen Hand hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, cementing Alara Thorne as a literary star. The Odyssey Media deal was in full swing, with screenwriters pitching ideas for the Silent Witness adaptation. Her calendar was booked solid, with interviews, panels, and meetings with producers. She moved out of her Normal Heights apartment, buying a charming craftsman home with a dedicated office overlooking a lush garden. It was a place where she could write, where Helena could come to life, unburdened by past expectations. One afternoon, sitting in her new office, surrounded by books and the scent of jasmine from the garden, her phone rang. It was Julian. "Mum, I just want to say thank you for everything, for showing me that there's more to life than the partner track. for helping me see that integrity actually matters. You're welcome, Julian, Nora said, a genuine warmth in her voice. He was still her son, and he was learning. He was changing. That was enough. She looked at the blank screen of her laptop, a new idea for Helena's next adventure forming in her mind. The air was quiet, filled with the hum of creation. She had spent her whole life making herself smaller, so other people could feel bigger, putting everyone else first, being the person who said yes, even when she wanted to say no. Now she chose herself, and the world was finally choosing her back. In the quiet aftermath of turmoil, Nora found herself reflecting not on revenge, but on reclamation. Her story, though, punctuated by dramatic turns and public vindication, was at its heart a testament to the quiet power of self-worth. It whispered that one's voice is not diminished by age, nor is ambition confined to the narrow definitions others impose. Nora's journey from invisible mother to celebrated author, from passive observer to astute strategist, illustrates that true fulfillment often lies beyond the approval of those closest to us. It lies in the courage to pursue a dormant dream, to trust one's own instincts, and to recognize that the very qualities others dismiss, like an age-appropriate hobby, can be the wellspring of profound strength and influence. The lessons learned were stark, that love, particularly familial love, can sometimes manifest as blindness and unintentional harm, but also that forgiveness and rebuilding are possible, given genuine effort and self-awareness. It underscored the insidious nature of subtle dismissals, how they can erode a spirit, and conversely how a single act of belief, whether from a forgotten teacher or an anonymous reader, can ignite a transformative fire. Nora's greatest triumph wasn't just exposing a fraud or achieving fame. It was in finally seeing herself fully and brilliantly beyond the reflections of others. If you saw yourself in Nora's story in the yearning for recognition, the quiet struggle for identity, or the eventual triumph of self, remember that your best chapters are always yet to be written. Subscribe for more stories that remind us it's never too late to author your own remarkable life. May you find your voice, cultivate your passion, and embrace the extraordinary journey that is uniquely yours. Peace be with you.